They didn't mean to start a war. The UHS Pathfinder wasn't built for that. It was just a scout ship, a sleek, underfunded explorer designed to map unclaimed systems, not to stumble into the heart of the most brutal empire in the galaxy. Captain Darius Cole leaned over the navigation screen, jaw clenched. "This isn't Rossin territory," he muttered, voice low and tense. "This isn't even neutral space." "What the hell is that?" said Tariq, his weapons officer, eyes wide as he stared at the tactical display. "Cap, we've got at least 30 war signatures closing in. Energy spikes, cloaked fortresses, drone swarms. I don't even know what half of this is." Darius didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the shimmering blue overlay, unnamed planets, orbiting death machines, and one central monolith of a station that radiated power like a dying star. He swallowed hard. The Vylari, a name whispered in secret by traders and smugglers, an empire that had erased species from existence without warning. Their ships were rare to see, because if you saw one, you didn't live to talk about it. "Stealth's gone," Tariq said. "They're pinging us with something. Not radar. It's invasive. I think they're scanning our brains, Cap." Darius exhaled sharply. "Get me open comms. Fast." The bridge lights dimmed as the enemy linked in. A cold, sterile voice filled the room. "Primitive vessel, you have entered the sacred domain of the Vylari Dominion. Identify your species and prepare for immediate surrender." Tariq looked at Darius, expecting diplomacy, pleading, maybe even submission. But Darius wasn't built like that. He stepped forward, lifted his chin, and stared dead into the screen. "This is Captain Darius Cole of the Pathfinder, United Human Systems. We crossed into your territory by accident. We don't want to fight." There was a pause. Then came the laughter. Not human laughter. No, something higher-pitched, cruel, and empty of emotion. Mocking. "A human?" the voice hissed. "How quaint. You'll be dissected for entering our space. Surrender and you may be preserved for study." Darius stared at the display. No face appeared, just a cold Vylari insignia, a twisted glyph of control. He didn't blink. "No." Tariq's head snapped up. "Sir?" "No," Darius repeated, louder this time. "We're not surrendering." There was silence again. Only this time it came with power spikes. The Vylari ships had heard the refusal. They were locking weapons. "They think we're weak," Darius said quietly, "because we're human, because we don't worship empires, because we don't kneel. But Cap, they'll kill us. Then they'll find out how hard we are to kill." The entire ship felt it. That shift. That grim, stubborn refusal to roll over. Orders spread. Shields powered up. Guns primed. It was suicide. The Pathfinder couldn't outrun them, couldn't overpower them, but it could fight like hell. The first boarding team came in fast, sleek pods crashing into the lower hull. Darius had the hallways rigged, not with sleek defense grids like the Vylari had, but with Earth's style. Pressure mines, acid vents, burst flash charges, and raw, brute force traps. One step in, and the screams began. They weren't ready. They weren't ready for the chaos, for the unpredictability, for the sheer human refusal to go quietly. Tariq's voice crackled over the intercom. "We got 3 of them down. 4th one's limping back to their pod." Darius smirked. "Let them run. Let them tell the others." He wasn't trying to win this battle. He was trying to make a point, that humans weren't prey, that this primitive race they mocked would rather burn than bow. They held out longer than they should have. Hours passed. Then a day. The Vylari pulled back, not out of respect, but out of confusion. It was the first time anyone had resisted. And that scared them. Rumors began leaking through black market communications. A human ship, a male captain who didn't kneel, a suicidal defiance that made the Vylari pause. Something dangerous had been awakened, and the mighty throne of the Empire had felt the first crack. The damage was everywhere: gutted corridors, ruptured pipes, exposed wiring sparking like angry snakes. The Pathfinder was bleeding, but it was still alive. And so was Captain Darius Cole. He limped through the main corridor, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his thigh where a Vylari shock blade had torn through. The pain was dull now, replaced by adrenaline and the cold fire of purpose. He passed a shattered viewing panel and glanced out. They hadn't left. The Vylari fleet remained, dark shapes drifting silently like predators in deep space, watching, waiting, studying. Cowards, Darius muttered. Inside the war room, Tariq and the rest of the command crew were gathered around the tactical table. Faces were bruised, clothes torn, but their eyes, those were sharp now, sharper than ever. "They're not attacking," Tariq said. "I think they're trying to figure us out." "Good," Darius replied. "That means we've already won the first fight." Ensign Riva, the youngest on the ship and fresh out of the academy, looked up. "We're still alive, sir, but we won't be for long if they decide to finish us off." Darius studied the room. They expected submission, not defiance. Now we've got them second-guessing. That's leverage. Tariq leaned forward. "Leverage doesn't keep us in the sky. Shields are down to 19%. Engines are overheating, and weapons are running on scraps. We're barely hanging on." Darius stepped up to the console and tapped into the comm logs. "Then let's do something they don't expect." He pulled up the Vylari frequency, a tight band signal used for command-level transmissions, forbidden to outsiders. He shouldn't have had it, but Darius had made friends in dark places before this mission even began. "What are you doing?" Riva whispered. "I'm picking a fight with a god," Darius said with a grim smile. The comm cracked open. A hollow silence answered. Then came the voice, again. The same one from earlier. Distant, emotionless, but laced with contempt. "You still breathe, insect. Why?" Darius stepped close to the mic. "Because you underestimated us. You are primitive, undisciplined. You fight like animals." He grinned. "Exactly. And animals don't follow rules. That's why you're scared." Another pause. "You amuse the council, so we offer a deal. Surrender yourself. Be judged. Your crew will be spared." A dozen eyes turned to Darius. He didn't hesitate. "No. This is not a negotiation, human. It is now." The channel went dead. No one spoke. Tariq finally said what everyone was thinking. "You just told the galaxy's most powerful empire to go to hell." Darius turned away from the console and began pacing. "We need to turn this into something bigger than us. If we're going to die, we die loud. We make them bleed so the rest of the galaxy sees they're not invincible." "You want to start a war?" Riva asked, pale. Darius shook his head. "I want to start something they can't control. Rebellions. Resistance. Hope." Riva swallowed hard, then nodded. "Hope, from a wrecked ship and a pissed-off captain." He grinned. "Stranger things have started empires." The next few hours were brutal. The crew patched hull breaches with whatever they could find: metal plating, foam welds, even scrap from destroyed Vylari drones. They cannibalized their own escape pods for power cells. The medbay ran out of painkillers, but the wounded stayed on duty. Every soul aboard Pathfinder knew they weren't making it home, but they'd make sure their names were remembered. Later, in the dim corridor outside engineering, Darius stood alone. He stared at a small picture taped to the wall. His little sister, back on Terra Nova, wearing his old flight jacket. She believed he was off discovering stars, not fighting gods. "I'm sorry, kid," he whispered, "but I gotta do this." Behind him, the alert klaxons screamed. The Vylari were coming again, but this time it wasn't a boarding party. It was a full-on assault, and Darius Cole smiled. Let's make this the fight they never forget. The ship groaned like it was alive, metal aching under the weight of incoming fire. The Pathfinder rocked hard as the first blast hit. Not a warning shot this time, but a precision strike aimed at the engines. Sparks exploded across the bridge. Crew hit the floor. Smoke hissed from the vents like the ship itself was exhaling its last breath. Darius Cole hauled himself upright. "Status! Port stabilizers gone," shouted Tariq, coughing as he fought through the smoke. "We're spinning. Engines are about to overheat. If we push them again, we might blow." "Then don't stop," Darius barked. "Let them blow with us." Riva scrambled back to her station, blood trickling from a cut above her brow. "They're deploying drones, dozens of them, circling us like sharks." He looked at the display. It wasn't a fleet anymore. It was an execution squad. The Velari had stopped watching. Now they wanted to erase. "Route emergency power to aft shields and lock in random evasive patterns," Darius said. "We don't match them in firepower, but we can make damn sure we stay a pain in their side." The bridge was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Orders flew, alarms screamed, and still they fought. Outside the hull, the battle was merciless. The Pathfinder, damaged and burning, darted through the swarm of enemy drones like a cornered animal with nothing left to lose. The drones were perfect. Polished, synchronized killers with energy blades and rail cannons. But they were predictable. Humans weren't. "Deploy decoy beacons," Darius ordered. "Then cut comms. I want us silent." Riva looked confused. "Silent, sir?" Darius grinned. "They're used to enemies begging for mercy. Let's give them silence. Make them wonder what we're planning." For the next 10 minutes, the Pathfinder played dead. It let itself drift. No lights, no signals, nothing but the hollow thrum of life support humming beneath the deck. The Velari paused their attack, cautious, curious. Then, slowly, they began pulling back. And that's when Darius struck. "Now!" he shouted. The false heat signatures they'd spread in the debris field flared up, pulling drones off course. Then came the mines, crudely built, but devastating in close quarters. Dozens of Velari units were torn apart in an instant. "Direct hit on their right wing," Riva shouted, eyes wide with shock. "One of their cruisers just turned away." Tariq slammed his fist on the console. "That's right, run, you shiny bastards." But Darius wasn't smiling anymore. Because the bigger ships weren't moving. They weren't even reacting. Something else was coming. "Everyone, quiet," he said. The room fell still. Then they saw it. A new vessel emerged from behind the Velari's front line. It was 3 times the size of their others. Sleek, silver, humming with unnatural light. It didn't move like a ship. It glided, like space itself bent around it. "What the hell is that?" whispered Riva. Darius knew. Not by name, but by instinct. A flagship. The real one. That was the throne. And whoever was aboard wasn't interested in prisoners. The comms flared again. No laughter this time. No arrogance. Just a simple, icy voice. "You have been entertaining, human. But now, the Sovereign speaks." The bridge fell silent. The weight of that word, sovereign, settled in everyone's bones. Darius stepped forward. "Then let him speak." The voice that answered wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Deep. Smooth like glass, but sharp like a blade under the skin. "You are an anomaly. A statistical outlier. You should have died in the first strike. And yet, you resist." "I don't care what your charts say," Darius replied. "You don't know humans. We know enough. You fight without unity. You survive through desperation. That is not strength. That is chaos." "No," Darius said calmly. "That's will, and it's what's going to break your throne." There was silence. Then, without warning, the flagship fired. The beam was silent, white-hot, and precise. It didn't aim for the engines. It didn't aim for weapons. It aimed for the bridge. The impact shattered the viewing screen and threw everyone backward. Flames engulfed the left side of the room. Darius hit the ground, his ears ringing, vision swimming. He couldn't hear, couldn't see clearly. But he crawled through the smoke, dragging himself to the control panel, fingers burned and bleeding. He slammed the emergency shield button. The backup dome locked in over the command center just before the vacuum could rip them all out. He lay there, breathing hard, chest heaving. That was the Sovereign's hello. But Darius wasn't done. He pulled himself upright, staring through the cracked dome at the enemy ship glowing in the distance. "You came all this way," he rasped, blood dripping from his mouth, "to kill one human ship?" He spat on the floor. "Then maybe you're more scared than you look." Smoke clung to the ceiling like a curse. The bridge lights flickered in and out, struggling to stay alive, just like the crew. Captain Darius Cole sat slumped against the bulkhead. The skin on his left arm blistered from the heat, his shirt scorched and torn. His breath came in short bursts, but his eyes were clear, alive, furious. The Sovereign's ship loomed outside, untouched by the chaos it had unleashed, a floating monument to Vailari perfection. It didn't move because it didn't have to. It just was, and its presence made the entire crew feel like ants crawling through fire. Darius pulled himself upright using the shattered console. His fingers shook as he reconnected a power relay with half-melted wires. Sparks bit into his skin, but he didn't stop. "Weapon systems?" he croaked. Tariq wiped blood from his forehead. "Offline. Comms are fried. Shield grid's got maybe one more hit in it before we're toast." "What about the core?" Riva, her voice weak, checked the engineering feed. "Holding, barely. If we divert everything to engines, we might get one burn." One Darius nodded slowly. "Then we use it." Tariq stared at him. "Use it to what? Run? That monster out there will swat us like a bug. We can't outrun something that bends space." Darius turned and stared at the glowing Sovereign ship. "Not running?" Riva squinted. "Wait, you're not thinking of—" "I'm ramming it," he said flatly. Silence slammed over the bridge like a door shut tight. "You've lost it," Tariq muttered. "Cap, you're concussed, bleeding. There's no tactical logic to this. That thing will shred us before we get close." "Exactly," Darius replied. "They expect logic, strategy, clean battles. We don't give them that. We give them something dirty, something they'll remember." "But we'll die," Riva said, her voice barely audible. Darius looked at her. There was no anger in his eyes, just a brutal kind of calm. "Yeah, we might." He took a breath, coughed hard, and steadied himself on the command rail. "But here's what I know. If we die quiet, they'll erase us. But if we hit them hard, direct, bloody, they'll never forget us. And someone out there, some scared colony world or enslaved race, they'll see it, they'll know." Riva nodded slowly. "That someone stood up to them." Tariq let out a bitter laugh. "Well, hell, if we're going out, might as well go out like bastards." Darius gave a grim smile. "Exactly." They went to work. What was left of the crew funneled everything into propulsion. Life support got cut. Lights went black. Internal systems were drained dry. The Pathfinder became a single-purpose weapon, a burning spear. "We've got one shot," Tariq said, gripping the manual ignition. Darius stepped up to the cracked viewport and looked at the Sovereign. "Then we aim for its heart." Riva pulled herself over to navigation. "We can't plot a full course, but I can lock trajectory. It'll take us straight through their forward hull, if we last long enough." Alarms screamed. The Sovereign had noticed the change. Its ship shifted, charging up its next beam. Faster this time. No more hesitation. "They're going to fire again," Riva said, heart pounding. "Then we beat them to the punch." Darius sat in the captain's chair, fingers gripping the armrests like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. "Hit it!" Tariq slammed the ignition. The Pathfinder roared. The engine screamed like a dying god, every bolt in the hull vibrating as it shot forward. The entire ship groaned, burning itself alive just to move. Darius leaned forward in his seat, eyes locked on the glowing heart of the Sovereign's vessel. The Velari ship flinched. Darius saw it. They weren't prepared for this. Their weapons fired, but the blast missed. By inches. The Pathfinder spun through the flames like a comet. The impact was violent, deafening, and brilliant. The nose of the human ship struck the Sovereign's hull like a thunderclap in vacuum. There was no explosion at first, just a ripple, a shimmer. Then the light tore through the darkness. Both ships vanished in a blinding flash that could be seen from orbit, and then silence. The Pathfinder was gone. So was the front half of the Sovereign ship. Chunks of alloy and alien tech floated in the debris field. Flames flickered and died in the emptiness. But the message had been sent. One human ship, one mad captain, one suicidal strike, and the galaxy had seen it. The wreckage drifted in silence. Shattered metal twisted through the void like the remains of a fallen god. What was left of the Pathfinder spun slowly, its hull ripped open. Trails of scorched plating scattered across miles of space. The Velari flagship, the once pristine embodiment of imperial power, was wounded, a smoking gash carved into its forward deck. Fires raged where there should have been silence. Inside the ruins of the Pathfinder, emergency lights blinked dimly in rhythm, flickering like the last heartbeat of a dying beast. Then, movement. A hand shoved through twisted metal, bloodied, burned, alive. Darius Cole dragged himself from the crushed remains of the forward chamber, coughing up black soot. His body was wrecked. Every limb screamed in protest, ribs cracked, one eye swollen shut. But he was breathing. Barely. He stumbled to a partial viewport, jagged glass slicing into his palm as he braced himself against it. He saw the Sovereign, still floating, still intact, but damaged, its invincibility shattered. "You're still up," he whispered, coughing out blood. "But so am I." Behind him, two more figures crawled out of the debris, Tariq, limping, missing his left arm from the elbow down, and Riva, covered in burns but standing, eyes wide with disbelief. "Cap..." Tariq's voice was hoarse, cracked. "We're alive?" Darius didn't answer. He was staring at something else now, outside the wreckage. Smaller ships, dozens of them, not Velari. They hovered at the edge of the debris field, watching, hesitating. Riva squinted through the cracked panel. "Are those..." She didn't finish. One of the ships blinked its lights, a coded signal. Recognition. Another blinked. Then another. The comms came to life, barely holding on. Static, broken words, but real voices. "This is the free arc of Doranus, confirming human contact. Heard the explosion from our quadrant. Never thought we'd see the Velari bleed. Captain Cole, if you're still breathing, you've just started something bigger than you can imagine." Darius closed his eyes for a moment, just to feel the weight of it all settle. They'd seen it. The galaxy had seen it. He opened the emergency broadcast channel and leaned in, his voice low but steady. "This is Captain Darius Cole, of what's left of the Pathfinder." He looked up at the Sovereign, still burning in the distance. We came here by mistake." He paused. "But we stayed on purpose." Across space, signals began lighting up, ships declaring their presence, colonies, smugglers, former Vylari subjects long silent. Some voices sounded hopeful, others just angry. They weren't organized, not yet. But Darius had lit the spark. Tariq sat down against the bulkhead, blood trailing from his stump. "So what now?" "They've got more ships. We're 1 foot in the grave." Darius looked at him, fire still alive in his eyes. "Then we show them something new, something they've never seen before." Riva leaned in. "What's that?" He smiled through cracked lips. "A united galaxy that fights back." Far off, deep in the Vylari High Command, word of the incident was already spreading like a virus, and the Sovereign, though alive, had been damaged, publicly. For the first time in 1,000 years, the throne wasn't feared. It was questioned, all because one human refused to kneel. The underground halls of the asteroid base buzzed with unfamiliar life. 3 weeks had passed since the Pathfinder's suicidal assault shattered the illusion of Vylari invincibility. News of Captain Darius Cole's stand had spread like wildfire, faster than any comm relay ever could. Stories grew, mutated. Some said he rammed the Sovereign flagship alone. Others claimed he'd boarded it, face bloodied, and set the core to overload with his bare hands. The truth didn't matter now. What mattered was that for the first time in centuries, people believed the Vylari could bleed. Inside the repurposed base, once a mining station, now a war council, Darius stood at the center of a circular chamber. Still wrapped in bandages, still walking with a limp, but standing tall. His uniform was scorched and patched, his beard rough from recovery, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. Around him, the room was full. Half the people here shouldn't even be in the same building, let alone at the same table. A crusty ex-pirate from the Serix Rims. A rebel leader from the drowned cities of Zel-Loren. A defected Vylari scientist who refused to wear their insignia. And dozens of others, smugglers, exiles, orphaned fleet captains, freedom fighters, civilians who had watched their homes burn. "I didn't call you here to start a war," Darius said, his voice even. "The Vylari already started it. We've just been too scattered to fight back." The scientist, Visari, thin and ghost-eyed, crossed her arms. "They'll retaliate for what you did. The Sovereign was damaged, publicly. They'll need to reassert dominance, quickly." "Then let them come," said the ex-pirate, a wiry man with a voice like broken glass. "You cracked their mask. If we hit them again, fast and loud, people might finally realize they don't have to live under a boot." Murmurs spread. Darius let them talk, but his mind was already 10 moves ahead. He hadn't just survived that day, he'd learned. About them, about how they think, how they rule, and how terrified they were of unpredictability. "Listen," he said finally, and the room fell quiet. "We're not going to beat the Vylari with fleets. They have millions of ships. They've bred themselves into war machines." He stepped forward, hand resting on the edge of the old console table. "But they've never faced chaos. Not real chaos. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't play by their rules." Riva, seated beside Tariq in a powered exo-brace, nodded. "You mean guerrilla strikes, sabotage, raids?" "I mean making the galaxy ungovernable for them," Darius said. "We hit their supply lines, free their labor camps, hijack their comms and broadcast truth, turn their propaganda into poison." Tariq chuckled darkly. "You're asking a bunch of pissed-off exiles to become a resistance." "I'm asking them to become more," Darius said, "to become a legend." Silence hung, thick and alive. Then Visari spoke. "You want to ignite a movement?" "No," Darius said. "I already did." He turned and keyed up the comm console. Dozens of scattered signals blinked on a star map, small dots like flickers of candlelight in the dark. These are independent cells, hidden rebel pockets. They've stayed quiet because they thought they were alone. He turned back to the room. They're not anymore. The pirate leaned back, impressed. You're serious? As a heart attack, Darius said. A low buzz echoed through the base. Someone was arriving. The security comm crackled. Sir, you're not going to believe this. Darius stepped into the hallway as a new ship touched down in the hangar. He watched the ramp lower and blinked in disbelief. A Vylari soldier, a full-blooded elite, wearing torn insignia and battle-worn armor, stepped out, hands raised. His face was grim. I heard the Sovereign bled, the soldier said. I've waited years for that. Darius said nothing. I'm here to help burn their empire to the ground. Back inside the war room, the map zoomed out. The flickers grew brighter. More signals, more whispers. Hope was rising. The Vylari had ruled through fear, but now fear had changed sides. The resistance didn't wait. They couldn't. In every corner of the known galaxy, once dead comm channels came alive. Codes long forgotten began to pulse. Hideouts lit their war beacons. For decades, people had whispered about fighting back. After Captain Darius Cole, they shouted. But no one knew if they could win. Not really. That's why Darius chose Volar Station for the first strike. Not a capital. Not a fortress. Just a fortified relay hub in the inner Vylari network. Critical enough to hurt if it fell, but small enough to take before reinforcements arrived. The kind of target that made a statement. We know where you live now. Inside the dropship, Darius strapped in, the harness cutting into his still-healing ribs. His hands rested over the rusted rifle across his lap. It wasn't the standard UHS issue anymore. It had been modified, rebuilt, personalized like everything else they used. Nothing uniform, just functional. Human. Riva sat across from him, suit half-burned, eyes steady. We've got 5 minutes to breach. You sure about this? Darius met her gaze. I'd rather die doing than die hiding. Next to them, the defected Vylari soldier, Sarin, checked his gear. His alien armor had been stripped of its emblems. His movements were stiff, like someone unlearning centuries of control. You know this place? Darius asked him. Sarin nodded once. They won't expect an attack here. It's protocol. Anything below Omega security is considered untouchable. Perfect, Darius muttered. The ship rumbled hard. Stealth entry passed the station's scanner net. Tariq's voice came through the comms from the command ship above. Doors are opening in 10. We've jammed their internal comms for now, but you've got a 10-minute window. After that, they'll scream for backup. Copy that, Darius said, standing. His body groaned with pain, but he didn't care. He needed them to see his face. He wanted them to know who had hit them. The ramp dropped. Heat, screams, blaster fire. They charged into Volar Station like fire let loose. The first hallway was clean. Too clean. Lights clinical, white and humming. Darius didn't trust it. The Vylari were precise. Their silence was never peace. It was preparation. Sarin moved like a ghost through the corridor. Main relay chamber is down this level, 3rd tier, but they'll send autoguards the second we cross the primary sensor line. Riva raised her blaster. So we move loud. The sensor tripped. Red lights flared. Doors burst open. Mechanical Vylari drones poured in. 8-legged death machines with energy blades for arms and glowing optics like soulless eyes. Darius didn't hesitate. Light them up! Gunfire tore through the corridor. Drones shrieked as explosions ripped them apart. Riva ducked under a sweeping blade and planted a plasma charge straight into a drone's midsection. It went down screaming. Darius moved with purpose. No finesse, no grace, just force. He shot 2 drones, smashed a third with the butt of his rifle, then kept running. Saren took point. His knowledge of the station was the only reason they were still alive. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. One of the Empire's own was now their key to tearing it down. They reached the relay core, a massive chamber pulsing with energy, walls lined with black Velari code. This was their neural node. From here, entire sectors were monitored, silenced, or controlled. Darius approached the console. "What now?" Riva asked. He stared at it. "We send a message." Tariq's voice crackled in. "We've got about 4 minutes before their long-range systems reboot. If you're going to make noise, make it now." Darius pulled a battered data drive from his vest. "Plug this in." The drive contained footage from the Sovereign attack, the Pathfinder's last stand. Everything. It had been recovered, patched, and edited for one purpose: broadcast. Riva locked it in. The screens flickered. A transmission went live. Wideband. Across dozens of worlds, Velari-controlled networks began glitching. Black screens became flickering images. Then they turned solid. Captain Darius Cole's bloodied face appeared. "This is for every world that's lived in silence. Every voice the Empire erased. You're not alone. We're coming." The feed shifted to images of the Sovereign ship burning, Velari troops retreating, rebels rising. Saren stepped up beside him, speaking into the feed in his own language. A message to his people. "You don't have to serve monsters forever." The station began to shake. The security force had arrived. Darius heard the boots, hundreds of them. Riva looked at him. "We're not getting out of here, are we?" "No," he said calmly, "but the message will." They fought their way back, inch by bloody inch. One by one, rebels fell. Saren stayed behind to seal the corridor, buying them time. His last words: "Make them fear their own children." Darius and Riva barely reached the escape hatch. A final blast threw them clear, into the void, just as the station lit up with fire. From orbit, Tariq watched the signal spread like wildfire. World after world tuning in. No more silence. No more obedience. The Velari called it heresy. The galaxy called it hope. The galaxy was burning, but this time not under the Velari flag. In the weeks following the Volar broadcast, chaos spread like a plague through the Dominion. Garrison worlds fell silent. Slave colonies revolted. Entire fleets defected. What began as a suicide mission by a single human ship had become something more terrifying to the Velari than any weapon. Uncontrolled defiance. At the heart of it all stood Captain Darius Cole, bruised, scarred, hunted, but undefeated. He stood now aboard the Resolute, a repurposed Velari cruiser taken during a daring ambush by the rebellion's newest faction. Exiled nobles and ex-soldiers who'd grown tired of the Sovereign's purity. The ship was massive, half-destroyed, patched with human tech and scrap. But it flew, and Darius commanded it. He looked out from the bridge, staring at the dark shape in the distance, the Sovereign's vessel. He was back where it all started. But this time, he wasn't here by mistake. Riva stood at his side, her face drawn tight. "We've confirmed the intel. The Sovereign himself is aboard. They know we're coming." "They've known for a long time," Darius said quietly. "But they kept hoping I'd die quietly somewhere. That hope's about to run out." Tariq's voice came in from engineering. "Engines are hot. We're patched together with prayers and plastic wrap, but we can fly." "Good. We don't need to live long. We just need to be loud." The rebel fleet, if you could call it that, moved into position behind them. A ragtag swarm of modified haulers, pirate ships, ancient Terran frigates, and stolen Dominion scouts. It looked like junk from orbit, but Darius knew better. Every single ship in that fleet was furious, and fury was stronger than fear. He opened communications. To everyone listening, this is Darius Cole. That thing out there, that sovereign ship, that's not a god. It's a lie wrapped in metal. It's ruled through silence, through fear, through killing anyone who dared speak up. He paused, glancing at Reva, then out the viewport. We're speaking now. The comms exploded with cheers, war drums, chants in 100 languages, and then, battle. The Sovereign's fleet moved like a tide, flawless, disciplined, elegant. But the rebels came like fire, fast and hungry, ignoring formations, targeting weak points, swarming ships with suicidal precision. Inside the Resolute, alarms blared. The hull screamed as it took hit after hit. Reva was thrown against the console. Blood trickled down her temple. Shields at 40%, Darius stayed on course. Hold it steady. Outside, 2 rebel ships slammed into a Vylari cruiser, ripping it apart. Another vessel, flown by defectors, transmitted a false signal and got behind the enemy's rear line, then detonated its core, taking 3 Dominion ships with it. They weren't here to win. They were here to end it. But then, the Sovereign's voice returned, cold, cruel, and calm. Darius Cole, you mistake desperation for strength. You will fall. You were never meant to matter. Darius stepped forward to the comms console. I wasn't meant to survive either. But here I am. You seek chaos, we are order. You're not order. You're a cage. A sudden energy surge hit the Resolute. Lights went dead. Systems flickered. Reva screamed, EMP wave! We've lost guidance. The Sovereign's ship powered its main weapon, something ancient, something designed not to destroy but to erase. A beam that could silence the memory of rebellion itself. Darius reached into his coat and pulled out a second drive. The drive. Not footage, not propaganda. A virus. Built by Visari before she died in a sabotage mission. Coded with Dominion architecture. It didn't destroy their systems. It rewrote them. He turned to Reva. Plug this in. She blinked. We'll lose control of the ship. I know. But we'll crash. I know. He smiled, blood on his teeth. But we'll crash into history. She hesitated, then shoved the drive home. The ship roared. Controls failed. Lights burst, and then silence. The Resolute, dead in the water, drifted toward the Sovereign ship. No shields, no weapons, no signals, just one last payload. Inside the Sovereign ship, systems began to glitch. Alarms in the command chamber, lights shifting red. The bridge crew of the Dominion looked to their master, and for the first time in centuries saw confusion. Then Darius's face appeared on every screen. I told you, you're not a god. You're just another throne waiting to fall. The Resolute slammed into the Sovereign. The explosion wasn't fire. It was freedom. The virus spread. Systems melted. AI networks collapsed. The Sovereign's dominion began to crumble in real time. Across the galaxy, the effect was instant. Orders stopped. Surveillance blacked out. Entire colonies woke up and realized the eyes were gone. The war wasn't over. But the throne was empty. Darius Cole died a legend. But what he started never died. It grew. No one had heard from Earth in over 100 years. The core systems said humanity went extinct after the solar collapse. That was the story passed around the stars like a bedtime tale. Earth's last transmission was a garbled distress call, static and screams. After that, silence. For most of the galaxy, Earth became a graveyard in the minds of younger races, a planet of dust, bones, and burned-out satellites drifting like ghosts above the blue marble that once roared. But they didn't die. They hid. Admiral Terran of the Halvar Dominion had heard rumors, pirate stories mostly, about strange ships with ancient Terran markings salvaging dead sectors, disappearing before scanners could lock. Others told of lone freighters vanishing near the Orion Drift, where old Earth colonies once stood. The Galactic Council ignored it. Fairy tales, they called them. Then the humans returned. The Dominion flagship Vraxilon hovered in low orbit above a once-abandoned planet called Ordos IV. Terran stood on the command deck, his 4 eyes narrowed at the dusty terrain below. The planet had gone quiet after being mined dry by Dominion forces 50 years ago. There shouldn't have been anything left, let alone signs of movement. But something flickered. Something big. "Sir," the navigation officer chirped. "We're picking up heat signatures below the surface. Dozens of them. They're powering up." Terran frowned. "Is it natural geothermal activity?" The officer hesitated. "Negative, sir. These patterns are artificial, engine cores." That got everyone's attention. Suddenly the planet shook, not from below, but from the air. It was as if the sky itself sighed. And then they rose. Old ships, not sleek like Dominion cruisers or elegant like Elvery star yachts. These were brutal, rust-scarred behemoths of steel and fire. Every line screamed war. Thick armor, rotating cannons, engines that growled rather than hummed. The largest one, a destroyer with the name Judicator carved into its hull, climbed out of a hidden silo with the fury of the planet behind it. Dust clouds followed like storm fronts. The Dominion scanners went haywire trying to track it. Terran staggered back as the ship's full power signature hit the bridge like a wave. "This isn't possible," his science officer stammered. "This thing's older than our entire Navy, but it's outputting more energy than our entire fleet combined." That was when the voice came through. It wasn't a normal hail. It bypassed their comm systems entirely, bleeding straight into their minds like an invasive thought. "We never left. We just waited. And now we remember everything you forgot." Gasp as spread across the bridge. Terran tried to respond, but he couldn't. The Dominion's encryption protocols were worthless. He could only watch as Judicator turned its guns toward the sky. A second ship emerged, then a third. The hidden fleet stretched miles across, crawling out of ravines and mountains like buried titans awakening. The Dominion armada scrambled, raising shields and charging weapons, but it was too late. The first blast from the human destroyer didn't just cut through space, it erased it. A Dominion frigate vanished in a white-hot blink, atomized down to its name. "Stand down," the voice commanded again, "or be reminded why we were once feared." Terran didn't stand down. Pride wouldn't let him. But as the rest of the human fleet unveiled itself across the galaxy, each awakening from centuries of silence, he realized they had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't gone. They were rebuilding. And now they were back. Not with sleek diplomacy, not with politics or trade. They returned with rust, fire, and memory, the kind of memory that turns legends into warnings. Terran watched as a second Dominion cruiser, Vaz Thur, exploded into blue fire. No warning, no countdown, just annihilation. He staggered backward, gripping the edge of the command deck rail as the shockwave rocked the Vraxilon. His crew scrambled, voices overlapping in panic. "They're targeting us!" No lock-on delay, no shield breach, it just went through. "How old are these ships again?" "Too old," Terran muttered, "and too angry." He stared at the massive human destroyer, now hovering in the sky like a sleeping beast awakened. The Judicator made no further move. It didn't need to. The message was already clear. The humans were showing restraint, for now. "Bring us into high orbit," he ordered through gritted teeth. and try to re-establish comms. I want to speak to whoever's commanding that fleet." "Sir, they bypassed everything. Our channels, our systems. They're using something else." Terran turned slowly, his eyes dark and hollow. "Then find another way. Because if we can't talk, we'll have to fight. And we're not winning that." As the Vraxilon slowly pulled away, down below the buried cities of Ordos IV hummed with life. Humanity's underground colonies, once thought destroyed, were now shining with hidden power. Energy fields lit ancient concrete towers. Massive steel doors opened like mouths of war. Dozens, maybe hundreds of ships were being rolled out onto subterranean launch pads. They weren't built for beauty. They were built to kill. On board the Judicator, Commander Yara Holt leaned over the central display, watching the Dominion fleet scramble. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. "This isn't war," she said to no one in particular. "It's remembrance." Her second-in-command, a cyborg veteran named Silas Core, grunted as he adjusted his artificial arm. "They sure don't remember us kindly." "They don't remember us at all," she replied. "And that's the problem." Yara's voice triggered a relay system across the fleet. Thousands of buried AI systems flickered to life. The human defense protocol had stayed dormant for nearly a century, hidden in encrypted vaults across dozens of dead sectors. But now, their time had come. A new channel opened on the display. It wasn't from the Dominion flagship. It was from the Council. Someone finally noticed. A shimmering alien hologram appeared above the display, the image of Counselor Verak of the Core Systems. His long neck stretched upward as his 4 fingers trembled. "Human, Commander," he said slowly. "This action, this show of aggression violates the Peace of 12. Yara tilted her head, voice cold. "Peace? You erased us, called us extinct, picked apart our ruins and mocked our silence. That wasn't peace. That was amnesia." Verak hesitated. "Then what do you call what you're doing now?" She stepped forward. "Balance." With a flick of her hand, she sent a cascade of data, scans, records, footage, showing hidden Terran bunkers, stolen tech recovered from Dominion labs, corpses experimented on in alien strongholds. The galaxy had treated humanity's fall as opportunity, but humanity had never truly fallen. They'd burrowed, healed, and waited. Yara cut the channel. "Time to wake the others." Across the stars, encrypted pulses launched from the human ships, bouncing across wormholes, derelict satellites, and long-dead relays. Each signal hit a buried node in a forgotten system. And one by one, across the galaxy, lights turned back on. Earth wasn't alone. Colonies once thought dead lit up in reds and golds. Ships launched from moons no longer marked on galactic maps. Human-built AIs reawakened after decades of sleep, whispering old codes through the vacuum. On Terra Prime, the real Earth, hidden behind a cloaking array so complex even the core systems believed it destroyed. President Kyle Draven opened his eyes as his chamber lights turned green. "They remember," he said softly. Beside him, Admiral Voss stepped forward. "Then it's time we remind them who we are." And just like that, the rebirth of the Terran Order had begun. It began not with war, but with whispers. A day after the humans revealed themselves, the galaxy trembled beneath the weight of sudden uncertainty. No one attacked again. Not yet. But the message was loud enough to shatter a century of confidence. On the Dominion homeworld of Velkara, emergency meetings erupted in every tier of government. Military analysts tore through every scrap of old Earth data, trying to piece together how these forgotten savages had built ships strong enough to disintegrate star cruisers. The core systems argued over diplomacy versus force. The trade guilds demanded reparations for Terran salvage now deemed stolen property. Everyone was scrambling. And the humans? They waited. Commander Yara Holt sat inside the war room of the Judicator, staring at the incoming flood of messages. Most were threats dressed in formalities. Some were genuine confusion. Young civilizations who'd never even met a human before now. They asked questions. Wanted peace. Some begged for alliance. A few warned her of assassination plots. But Yara wasn't focused on politics. She had a much older score to settle. A slow, blinking red icon on her personal terminal caught her eye. It was an encrypted archive from her grandfather's time. A general during the collapse. She tapped it. The screen lit up with a shaky recording of a battlefield strewn with Terran bodies, burned flags, and alien soldiers planting their banners atop broken Earth tanks. This, the old general's voice crackled, wasn't defeat. It was betrayal. The Council turned their backs, let us burn, and took what they wanted from the ashes. But we buried our teeth in the dirt, and one day, we bite back. She watched the last frame. Her grandfather bloodied, holding a detonator to collapse the bunker on himself to protect classified tech from falling into alien hands. She didn't flinch. She remembered. Silas Core entered the room quietly. The Velkarans just broadcasted an ultimatum. Leave the Ordos sector or be wiped from existence. Yara didn't even blink. Send them a reply. What do you want it to say? She stood slowly. Tell them, the Ordos sector doesn't belong to them. It never did. It was ours before the Council even knew how to sail the stars. Silas smirked. Short and sweet, got it. Meanwhile, Admiral Terran, aboard the Vraxilon, was growing desperate. He had witnessed the impossible. Ships older than his empire wielding power more devastating than anything in the Dominion arsenal. The more he watched the footage, the more he feared this wasn't a rogue incident. It was a reawakening. We underestimated them, he finally admitted aloud during a high command briefing. We didn't just leave them behind. We pushed them into a corner and forgot they were still watching. Then we strike first, growled General Ross, a brute of a Velkaran bred for war. Wipe out their fleet before they rebuild any further. You still don't get it, Terran snapped. This isn't their full fleet. These are just the first ships, the tip of the blade. We don't even know how many are still buried, hidden. They've been planning this for decades, maybe centuries. Silence. Ross growled, but said no more. Across the galaxy, in the great floating city of Velis Prime, a meeting of the Galactic Council was called. For the first time in over 2 centuries, the seat marked Terran Alliance flickered to life. It wasn't Yara Holt who appeared, nor Kale Dreven. It was an AI, humanoid in shape, but gleaming silver with a fractured ancient crest of Earth over its chest. It spoke in a calm voice that still carried thunder. You stripped our name from your records, deleted us from your archives, but names are not erased. They are remembered, and we are very much remembered. Councillor Verak tried to speak, but the AI raised one finger. We are not here to ask for a seat. We are here to warn you. The room fell still. The AI's eyes lit brighter. Do not come for what's buried. Do not touch what you do not understand. The old Terran fleets slumber in places your maps forgot. But the moment you dig, they'll rise. And the next time we launch, we won't be warning anyone. The message ended. And across the galaxy, a cold fear swept every empire. Because deep down, they all realized something brutal, something undeniable. Humanity had never truly lost. They just played dead better than anyone else. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy slipped into something worse than war: silence. Trade routes froze. Civilian transports rerouted around any human-claimed sectors. Black markets surged with old Earth tech suddenly declared illegal relics. Fleets moved, but didn't fire. Every empire was watching the Terrans now, waiting to see if the ghosts from humanity's past would rise further from the soil of forgotten worlds. And rise they did. One by one, human-controlled sectors, long abandoned, stripped, or colonized by other species, lit up with activation codes. Ancient bunkers cracked open, defense satellites blinked to life. Shipyards once thought ruined spat out newly awakened dreadnoughts. Orbiting moons trembled under the thrum of resurrected machines. No declarations, no formal war, just a quiet reclaiming of what was once theirs. On Terra Prime, deep beneath the surface in the sanctum of memory, President Cale Dreven stood inside a chamber of glass and fire, surrounded by holographic memorials of the lost systems, each representing a planet or colony left to die during the solar collapse. He wasn't a man of passion, but something burned behind his eyes. "We were abandoned," he said to the circle of commanders around him, "and while the galaxy drank from our ruins, we rebuilt in shadows. Now they want peace, because they finally understand the mistake they made." Commander Yara's image flickered into the chamber. "They'll never let us rise. Not truly. They're afraid now." Kyle nodded. "Good. Fear is honest. Fear means they're starting to remember why they once needed us, why they feared our minds more than our weapons." Silas Core's voice cut in, rough as gravel. "Should we strike first? Hit a core fleet, make it loud?" "No," Kyle said simply. "We don't need to strike first. They'll do that for us." And they did. It was the Corellians, arrogant, cold-blooded strategists who had once colonized 2 Terran outer colonies during the collapse. They didn't believe the hype. They thought humans were bluffing. So they sent a fleet. Not massive, but symbolic. 50 cruisers, enough to make a point. They entered Terran space near Vortan's Reach, a dead mining system that hadn't seen light in over 70 years. They didn't leave. No distress calls, no wreckage, just nothing. A week later, a single Corellian warpod was returned, ejected into neutral space near the Council's station. Inside were the crew's insignias, scorched by energy no species could identify. Pinned beside them was a data chip. The Council played it in private. It was a recording of the fleet's destruction. Frame by frame, grainy and terrifying. Human ships didn't rush. They waited. Then struck with such precision that it didn't feel like war. It felt like execution. The Corellians hadn't even managed to target lock. Counselor Veyrak watched the footage in silence, then spoke what every empire was thinking. "We're not fighting humans anymore. We're fighting ghosts in steel." Back aboard the Judicator, Yara stood in the observation deck, watching as 3 more Terran ships emerged from deep space vaults. "Third Fleet's almost awake," Silas said, arms crossed. "We'll be at full strength within the month." Yara nodded. "And when that happens?" Silas smiled bitterly. "Then we stop reminding them." She finished for him, eyes locked on the stars. "We make them remember." Far from the chaos, on a quiet fringe planet in the Thalorian Reach, a child stared up at the sky. Her species had no wars with humans, no hatred. Just stories. Stories of the fire they once brought, the peace they once enforced, and the way they vanished when the galaxy no longer deserved them. And tonight, she saw a shape cross the sky, long, dark, thunderous. She pointed. "Mama, look, a shadow." Her mother, a former history scholar, froze, because she recognized the silhouette from the oldest Terran files, from a time before silence, a time before peace. "That's no shadow," she whispered. "That's a judgment." The sky cracked open. That's how it felt when the 4th Terran fleet arrived at Eltar Prime, a jewel world of the Dominion, known for its marble oceans and orbiting palaces, the kind of place the Dominion lords built for themselves while empires starved. But on this day, their comfort shattered. No one expected the Terrans to strike a core world. Not yet. Not this soon. But that was the problem with the old humans. They never played by the rules everyone else had grown comfortable with. The first ship appeared without warning. No warp signature. No energy spike. Just there. The Solace of Ruin hovered in low orbit, ancient in design, with a hull covered in etched names. The names of lost Earth cities: Chicago, Damascus, Seoul, Lagos, Sydney, Kabul, Kingston. Names that meant nothing to most of the galaxy, but everything to those who wore Terran blood. Then came the others. Dozens. A fleet not made for diplomacy or intimidation, but for revenge. From the Dominion Palace Tower, Lord Captain Zevra screamed orders at his fleet, orders that no longer mattered. The planetary defense systems came online too late, orbital guns charged, fighter squadrons launched, and in 6 minutes it was all gone. No fancy maneuvers, no speeches, just precise surgical destruction. One by one, the palace domes fell. Communications were jammed, civilian escape routes shut down, not by accident, but by choice. The Terrans didn't want prisoners. They wanted a message. Back on the Solace of Ruin, Captain Issa Monroe watched the flames from orbit, her face a cold sculpture of grief and rage. "They used this planet's gold to fund the pillaging of our colonies," she said softly. "Built their temples from the bones of our dead. How poetic, that now their temples burn with them still inside." Her weapons officer, a soft-spoken AI named Dorian, responded without emotion. "Targeting complete. No remaining resistance." Issa didn't blink. "Leave the capital ruins untouched. Let the galaxy see what silence bought them." And just like that, the Fourth Fleet vanished, slipping into folded space like wraiths. The entire assault lasted under 10 minutes. But the aftermath rippled for decades. News spread like poison. The Dominion declared full war. The Council hesitated, and smaller empires, those who'd once fought beside humanity before the collapse, began to stir. Old oaths long buried under centuries of fear were now whispering again. One such whisper was a woman named Dr. Erin Voss, a historian of the Syrian Archive, a neutral species tasked with maintaining galactic history. She watched the footage from Eltar Prime with trembling hands. Unlike others, she knew what those Terran ships were. She'd studied them. Her life's work revolved around cataloging the war machines of the Terran Republic, and what she saw terrified her. "Those aren't even first strike ships," she told her colleague in a hushed voice. "They're mid-tier." "What?" She nodded, pale. "The Terrans haven't even woken up their orbital dread hives yet. The real power, the God Steel cruisers, the solar battery juggernauts, they're still sleeping." The man beside her laughed nervously. "Surely they won't go that far." Dr. Voss looked him dead in the eyes. "They haven't even started." Back on Terra Prime, President Kyle Dreven stood in the Hall of Silence, where the great bell chimed once for every fallen world reclaimed. Behind him, a wall of stars marked with red pins showed how much of Terran space had now been retaken. "Eltar Prime has fallen," the room echoed with the report. Kyle nodded. "Let it burn." A young advisor shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, some of the council members are requesting dialogue. Peace talks." Kyle turned slowly, voice like a sharpened blade. "Did they ask for peace when they stripped our dead of tech and sold it to the highest bidder?" No, sir." "Did they speak peace when they invaded Terra's moons, melted our flags into trophy metals, and used our survivors for testing?" "No, sir." Kyle stepped forward. "Then let the next one burn too." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was righteous. Terran space was no longer forgotten. It was being remembered, one world at a time. The galaxy finally cracked, After Eltar Prime fell, fear turned to frenzy. The Dominion's central network, thought to be unbreachable, was infiltrated by a Terran signal that simply read, "We know where your kings sleep." Within 24 hours, 12 lesser empires pulled out of Dominion treaties. The Trade Syndicate collapsed its convoys. The Council tried to convene another emergency session, but only half of its members showed up. The others had gone dark. Not to plot, to hide. Terran broadcasts now interrupted regular programming on dozens of planets. Grainy, monochrome videos of orbital strikes, archival clips of Terran colonies being overrun during the collapse, and whispered voices speaking in dead Earth languages. Most viewers didn't understand the words, but they felt them. They felt the pain, the betrayal, the warning. Humanity wasn't just taking back their territory, they were educating the galaxy. In fire. Meanwhile, on the fringes of core space, Admiral Terran sat inside a steel interrogation cube aboard the Dominion flagship Alien's Crown. He'd been demoted, then detained, for failing to prevent the Terran resurgence. A scapegoat. The Empire needed someone to blame. He didn't resist, because none of it mattered now. Through the reinforced walls, he could hear the distant hum of a nervous fleet. Fighters scrambling, shield arrays charging. The crew was tense, quiet, praying that today wouldn't be the day the sky opened again. Terran laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh, just tired. Because he knew something the rest still didn't understand. Something none of their projections could explain. The Terrans weren't trying to win a war. They were spreading a truth. That nothing, no council, no dominion, no archive of civilization could outlive the memory of a species that refused to die. And that memory was now a living thing. Back on the Judicator, Commander Yara Holt read the incoming reports. Another Dominion stronghold had fallen. No shots fired, no resistance. The local governor simply surrendered when the Terran fleet entered orbit. He walked into the main plaza, dropped to his knees, and handed over planetary control codes to a drone. The message he sent along with them was short. We were wrong. We see that now. Silas Core leaned over the tactical table, raising an eyebrow. You're winning their minds now, not just their planets. Yara didn't smile. Fear is fast, but guilt is permanent. In the far reaches of space, even planets untouched by the war were beginning to riot. Minor species rose up, demanding that their governments explain what they knew about the Terran collapse. Survivors of old Earth colonies, once enslaved or scattered, began to speak publicly. Their stories were ugly, raw, unfiltered. Entire archives of hidden war crimes surfaced. Videos of alien scientists experimenting on Terran children. Footage of council ships locking Earth out of safe zones during the solar collapse. Deals made in shadow, over bodies, under the lie of peace. Now, the truth was a wildfire. And the humans? They didn't need to stoke it. They just needed to exist. Kyle Draven stood before a newly ignited star map. Red zones showed retaken worlds. Yellow showed systems destabilized by Terran resurgence. But the green ones? The green marked something far worse. For the Council, voluntary surrender. These were the worlds who'd bent the knee not out of fear, but of remorse. Humanity is not a species, Kale whispered to himself, tracing the green points. It's a reckoning. One of his aides entered the chamber with a message. Sir, Corps Command has sent a peace offer. Full recognition of Terran sovereignty. Apologies. Reparations. Coyle raised an eyebrow. What's the catch? They want us to stop. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. No, he said flatly. We stop when every grave has been avenged. When every lie is burned. The aide hesitated. And when that's done, Kale turned, voice ice cold. Then we teach them what peace looks like after fire. Because this wasn't revenge. This was balance. And balance had a name again. Humanity. It began with murmurs of rebellion. Now it was a wave. Worlds that once bore the Dominion crest were tearing down their flags and raising Terran standards. Not by force, but by choice. Even species with long histories of enmity toward humans began re-examining old truths. What was once dismissed as propaganda, the suffering of Earth, the silence after the collapse, the betrayal of the Galactic Council, was now undeniable. The galaxy's foundation was cracking under the weight of memory. In orbit over Caltraxis, a strategic mining world still loyal to the Dominion, the Terran Sixth Fleet arrived. No announcement, no display, just presence. The sky filled with black hulks, ships whose hulls still bore scorch marks from ancient battles, vessels older than the current galactic cycle itself. The Iron Wake, St. Petersburg's Vengeance, Cradle Storm, names pulled from Terran myth now hung over the planet like the weight of judgment. Governor Arl Threx, a cold-blooded Elvari loyalist, activated planetary defense systems before the humans could hail. They didn't respond. Not with messages, not with fire. They simply waited. For 6 hours. Then, the planetary grid began to collapse. Not from weapons, but from within. Old Earth malware, buried deep in Dominion tech decades ago, activated with terrifying precision. Shields fell, turrets misfired, communications jammed, every system betrayed its master. Within moments, Caltraxis was defenseless. The humans still didn't attack. Instead, they opened every civilian channel with one repeating message. "We are not here for your people. We are here for the ones who sold ours." And as if on cue, the people of Caltraxis revolted. Terran operatives, long embedded in the underground, rose with caches of hidden weapons. Dominion guards were overrun. The planetary palace was stormed, not by soldiers, but by miners. Poor, dirty, forgotten men and women who remembered their Terran ancestry, with every scar the Dominion gave them. Governor Threx was dragged from his throne and dropped at the feet of a Terran drone. A simple message was transmitted to Terra Prime. "The mines are yours again." Kyle Draven read the message and remained silent for a long time. Around him, the War Council debated whether to move the next fleets into core space, strike the Council's heart, break their spine. But Kale was watching something else, a single green light blinking on his personal console. The vault was ready. It was the last piece of their buried past, the God Steel Forge, hidden deep beneath Mars' crust, forgotten even by Earth's remaining factions. It hadn't powered on since the solar collapse. But now, after 100 years of darkness, it was humming again. Yara Holt stood beside him, arms crossed. "Are we ready for them to see what we were really capable of?" Kale didn't answer. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, where a holographic schematic spun above the table. A ship unlike any other. The Remembrance. "It's more than a ship," he finally said. "It's proof." Silas Core, patched into the chamber via comms from the Judicator, nodded grimly. "The day that thing launches, the war ends. One way or another." Kyle stared into the projection. "No," he whispered. "Not a war. A reckoning across the galaxy, Council spies intercepted fragments of transmissions, mentions of the Remembrance, mentions of God Steel." Panic swept through Council chambers. If the Terrans had truly rebuilt their planet-killer vessels, the ones that had turned black holes into weapons, the ones that once held off a dozen fleets during the last days of Earth, then nothing would stop them now. Councillor Veyrak stood before a desperate assembly, the weight of survival behind his words. "We must act now. The Remembrance cannot be allowed to launch. If it does, We may no longer be negotiating with humans, but with gods. But it was too late. In the silence of deep Mars, ancient turbines roared. The forge awoke. Steel screamed, and the Remembrance opened its eyes. The Martian sky burned red, not with war, but with birth. As the Remembrance rose from the crust of Mars, the surface cracked beneath it. It wasn't launched. It emerged. Like an ancient god dragging itself from the underworld, wreathed in steam and thunder, its black metal hull groaned with centuries of silence finally broken. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not sleek, not efficient. It was impossible. A planetary dreadnought the size of a small moon, built entirely from god steel, a Terran alloy so dense it warped gravitational sensors just by existing. Its hull shimmered with embedded solar cores, pulsating like veins of molten light. Above it, the orbital defense ring, reignited after 122 years, broadcast a single signal on all known frequencies. We have finished remembering. Now we decide what to forgive. Across the stars, every empire paused. On Dominion command ships, captains stood in stunned silence. In council war rooms, advisors vomited from the rising panic. Even fringe pirates, long fed on Terran myth, stopped moving. Not out of fear, out of awe. For the galaxy had finally seen the Terran endgame. This wasn't about reclaiming borders. It was about redrawing history. President Kyle Draven stood aboard the command bridge of the Remembrance, its interior a cathedral of steel and light. The command console wasn't a seat. It was a chamber. The ship didn't respond to commands. It responded to conviction. Only one born of Earth's ashes could command it. And Kale's DNA, stitched with centuries of Terran pain, unlocked its final protocols. Before him, the stars unfolded. Yara Holt's voice came through, steady. "Every fleet is watching us. They're waiting for your signal." Silas Core chimed in, more grim. "And if you give it, there's no turning back." Kyle didn't flinch. He sent a broadcast, not as a demand, not as a threat, but as a statement of reality. The transmission echoed across every known system. "You had your age of gold. You built your towers on the corpses of our children and drank wine while we burned. You called us extinct. You made museums of our bones and sold our songs as artifacts. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to bury the lie. You have one choice left: acknowledge what was done, or watch what we can do." Counselor Veyrak stood in front of a silent chamber, trembling. "They're not bluffing," he whispered. "They don't need our approval. They don't need our surrender. They don't need us at all." In a last, frantic act of desperation, the core systems launched Project Terminus, a secret weapon designed to collapse a star within Terran space, to wipe out the Remembrance in a single strike. But the humans were already there. The Judicator intercepted the warhead in deep space, cracking it open and broadcasting its contents galaxy-wide. Coordinates, signatures, launch orders, all traced back to the Council itself. Humanity didn't respond with fire. They responded with proof. Billions of beings saw it, and the galaxy turned. The last thread of sympathy the Council had snapped. Riots consumed their core worlds. Alliances shattered. Refugees flooded Terran borders, not in fear, but in hope. Because for all the fire and fury, for all the steel and silence, the humans had never targeted the innocent. They were monsters only to those who had earned their wrath. And in that, they became something greater than feared. They became trusted. In the weeks that followed, entire empires dissolved. Terran banners rose in their place, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Systems once divided by species, history, and hatred now flew the same flag. A fractured Earth mended in steel. Kyle Draven stood on a balcony aboard the Remembrance, watching the stars through reinforced glass. Behind him, a young girl approached, one of the survivors from a forgotten colony world, taken in during the early reclaiming. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Are we the rulers now?" Kale knelt to her level, voice low, steady. "No," he said. "We're the memory, and the galaxy has a long way to go before it learns to remember right." And as the Terran fleets pulled back, not in retreat, but in silent triumph, the stars shifted, not in alignment, but in understanding. The age of forgetting was over, and the age of reckoning had only just begun.